Connecting to cloud server. Okay.
We're recording.
We're recording. Hi.
Hi.
So, hi. We have with us Autumn Kozimer from Events by Autumn. And I'm Erika, PlumTree Events. So how weird is this? We have two planners, which, you know, I don't think a lot of planners just like do this at all, really. Do they?
I don't think a lot of planners talk to each other.
Well, you know, so Autumn and I, we go back further than we realize. We didn't know it at the time, but when I worked in Colorado, or when I lived in Colorado, Autumn lived in Colorado, and she worked at the Millennium Harvest House, and I used to do events at the Millennium Harvest House. But right when she was hired, I stopped because I had a hissy fit because the planner that was there wasn't going to be there anymore, and I refused to work with anybody else. So I stopped doing events there.
Worked with me. Such a shame.
I know. And then I went back and started doing events again after she left. So we totally avoided each other through that whole time. And then when I moved up to Montana, like I was doing research and I saw that she had stuff and I'm like, why does she sound so familiar? Well, it turns out, yeah. So we're going to talk about our view and our side of the wedding thing. So we've got some questions that we're going to go through, courtesy of the knot, since most people use the knot. So, all right. Oh, Autumn, hi. Do you... Hey, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Let's see. I started Events by Autumn about 6 years ago. Actually 7 if you count Colorado, but I don't really count Colorado. I count moving to Montana. I lived in Montana for a long time and worked in the event industry in Montana for a hotel, and basically decided to take an opportunity in Colorado as a director of catering for a few years. Got my business pretty much started in Colorado as far as the contracts and the website and everything. And then I was like, all right, I'm ready. Let's go back to Montana. So I moved back into the house that I lived in before I left Montana, and just hit the ground running here. So I've been in business about 6 years. I have a team that helps me in the summertime, and I have one employee that, Mandy Callan, who helps me with all day of coordinating, and she's doing some full service events this year also.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anybody who doesn't know me, Erika Sherrick, I also was in Colorado, and that's where I kind of started everything. Notice how everybody starts things in Colorado and then moves to Montana.
And then they get out.
So this is going to be my 4th year in business here in Montana. And I too I've got my staff that I use during season, but right now I'm it. So eventually I've got one assistant, Jake, not from State Farm, but Jake. He's my right hand right now, and I'm kind of getting him primed to take on more over the next year or so. So, okie dokie. And I didn't live here before, and I didn't move into the same house. So we got a whole different house.
I just love this house so much I couldn't let it go.
Well, yeah, you do have a cool house.
A little log cabin in the woods. Yep.
And farm animals.
I do. I've got autumn acres. I got goats and horses and dogs. Well, no dogs right now because one's with the vet and the other one's with my parents. And then chickens.
Yeah.
Cat.
That's so many ideas with chickens right now. Okay, so here we go. The top 21 questions from the knot. All right. Number 1. Okay, so we're gonna start with the basics. Yeah. Are you available on my date? Autumn, are you available?
What is your date? I actually have an inquiry form that I have people fill out when we first get started to make sure that I have the date open and then I have the staffing available to be able to pull off the wedding, whatever size it is.
Same. I'm just gonna agree with you and say same, or if it's different, I'm gonna say not same. Okay. Can you work within our budget?
That depends what your budget is. I started when I first started doing day of, well, and still day of is whatever you want to spend on your wedding.
Right.
It's just my team is getting paid a certain amount to understand your plans, show up on the wedding day, set it up, tear it down, manage the vendors the whole day for you. So that's a more confined, we can work with a lot more confined budgets with day of. I also offer event design. That is basically a flat rate to help somebody design their wedding and send them off with the vendors I think can do the job for the price that that person's willing to pay. And then we get into more of the full service and the signature packages, which usually need a little bit larger budget, but that's because I am actually building things for you. And it's usually a little bit more on the high end or luxury market scale that I'm doing full service and signature packages. So yes, I work with all budgets, but it totally helps picking the right package to be able to afford some of the things that I offer.
Yeah. And we had that initial conversation, find out, what your overall budget is, and then what do you want? I mean, because we have a lot of people that they want all kinds of things, but they have a very small budget. So, I don't necessarily say no, I'm sorry, that can't happen, but here's what we can do to kind of get you as close to what you want as possible for your budget. So it can be a little tricky.
A lot of times when someone first calls me, we have this conversation where I understand, like, people call you and they have no idea what a wedding should cost, and they have no idea what the vendors are going to charge them once they get into the planning. So a lot of times I'll tell people, like, if you're going to get married in the Whitefish or Glacier area, gosh, you could spend anywhere from, I'd say, $600 a person to easily $1,000 a person for your budget to have a nice upscale wedding like you see on Pinterest. Whereas down here in like the Bitterroot Valley, I've got some clients that are really scaling it back, and they're at like a $350 to $450 per person budget. That's with hiring professional vendors for every category of your wedding. So like, I mean, there's all sorts of weddings out here in the Valley that are just DIY backyard barbecues. They're doing potluck and stuff like that and bringing in some kegs and calling it good, and they're only spending $5,000. They're not hiring a planner. Right. But the ones that do hire a planner, and you're showing me pictures of what you want on Pinterest, like, that helps give people a little bit more realistic estimate in their minds of what things are going to cost before they even get started.
Right.
How many guests they're going to invite at that budget, and where they're going to have their wedding.
And we all know the more guests, the higher the bill.
Dear God, people, if you want to cut back on your budget, you should cut back on your guest count first. It is the easiest way to cut back on your guest count, or to cut back on your budget, because good Lord, I can't tell you how many people have shown me a picture on the same pictures on Pinterest all the time. I'm like, yeah, that's a $200,000 wedding easily, but.
Or those big, oh my gosh. What I love is the, the arbors with all the flowers and the greenery and the pampas grass and just, and they're like, I want that. But they only have, $2,000 for flowers. And I'm like, well, that's well, just that piece alone is probably, yeah. Okay. Well, that just kind of goes right into what sort of services do you offer?
I have 4 basic packages. Let's see. The first, like I said, was day of. So really all it entails is clients sending me their contracts, and we kind of build an event plan based on what those contracts say. And then we sit down with the client and go through that event plan to make sure that's actually what they wanted. I find that that's the most helpful way to do day of planning, so that we're poking any holes in contracts we can before we even get to the wedding day. Like, the biggest thing that happens is that they book the DJ for 4 hours, but their timeline actually has the DJ going for 6. So going through that whole plan in advance means that your DJ isn't like, it's 10 o'clock, I'm out of here. And everybody else is like, we were staying till midnight. And then you got to pay extra money on the day of. That sucks. We don't want that to happen.
Right.
So we do the best we can in advance with day, and I call it day of, but day of does not exist. It's more of an event management kind of a package where we're putting in about 40 hours of work in advance of the wedding day, and then showing up the 20 hours between the rehearsal and the wedding day to actually execute it. So that's my basic package. Mandy actually runs that whole package. I don't do any of that planning. And then the other packages actually work directly with me. So I do the event design, like
They
I was
get
talking
me.
about, right? They get me. Event design where I'm actually drawing out tables and helping them with Pinterest boards and giving them ideas. And then I also go out after we're sure of the budget and sure of what they want. Then I give them suggestions for the vendors they can go to with materials to go to the vendors with, so that the vendors understand exactly what the client's asking for. And then the full service is basically the combination of those two packages, but they work directly with me. And then the signature package, my favorite, and the one that I always get booked for. I'm like,
And the crazy one.
right? But I love it when people book me for this one. And I've had a good amount of success with the signature package. But it's basically, I do graphic design. That was part of my background. I was a woodworking major in college. In case you didn't know that was a thing, you can major in woodworking in college. I did. So I did that. And I also double majored. I don't know if you can see this. Double major. Bachelor of Arts in Studio Art. That was my woodworking. And second major in dramatic art.
I'm shocked.
I bet you didn't know that.
I would have never guessed.
But seriously, I can like sew wedding dresses. I can do all that. Well, not that I would make someone a wedding dress, but if something happens on the wedding day, I have had to sew brides back into dresses and stuff. So yeah, I use that background and I build stuff for people. Like basically, if you see it on Pinterest and you can't rent it locally, I will just make it.
Okay. So, I mean, I actually, the smallest package I have is is just consultation. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're doing that backyard wedding and you have it all handled, but you just don't know little things and you just want somebody to look over your stuff. I do have, just that like 10 hours of consult package that I'll look over all your contracts and just make sure. I won't show up. Nobody will be on site the day of. It's just strictly to make sure that you've got everything, all your ducks in a row. Then I do also the day of, month of, management, whatever we want to call it. Works pretty much the same way as you. Take a look at everything, develop a plan, and then of course I'm on site, set up, break down, do all the things. And then I used to have a partial planning, but I have switched it.
Thank you. That's so hard.
Tell me about it. But you know what? The partial planning is the one that I get the most requests out of. Yeah. So what I did was I'm changing it to a custom package. So that way you can kind of look through and see and only pick and choose. So I guess it would be kind of like an a la carte and pick and choose what you want. But that does include everything from day of.
So I've had girls tell me, there have been a lot of instances where girls tell me, so I see what's listed in your package, but I don't really want that. I don't need that. My venue, this is my favorite. My venue creates a map of the space.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's fine, but I'm still going to do a map of the space. I'm still going to figure out the logistics and the sizing and do it to scale myself. I've had 2 venues in the last year represent their table size and misrepresent the size of their spaces. And I'm telling you, these are 2 real well-known venues that should know how to do this, that didn't do it right.
Right.
If I hadn't done it on my own, we would have totally had to change the seating arrangement on the day of because of the layout. And those clients all had family scenarios where they needed to make sure the guests were seated in certain areas of the room.
Right.
So there are things on my package where people try to say, I don't need that and I don't want it included. There's
so can you,
why it's in the package. I leave it in the package. I'm not taking it out. I'm still going to do the work for you. Even if the vendor does it, or even if another vendor does it for you, I still need to do it myself because I'm supposed to be in charge of everything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then I've got my full planning. I don't have any kind of signature weird, building
Nobody
stuff.
wants to do it.
I'm not building. I mean, I will build some things. Let me just I will build an arbor. If you want something I did doors and I mean, there's little things, but I'm not pouring concrete and whatever the heck else she does, some weird stuff.
Fabric, sewing, dyeing.
Well, I mean, I've made napkins and stuff, but I have as far as stationery, whereas Autumn has a paper company. Winter
Paper Company. Winter Paper Co.
Winter Paper Company. I have a vendor that I use who does all that for me. So that if you wanted to, like, whereas Autumn will just do it herself, I will get all the information and I'll send it out to her, and then she'll give me the proofs and we'll kind of just do it that way. So, but yeah, those are, I mean, we do elopements, you do elopements. We do those too. Not a whole lot, but I mean, they're there. And then this new micro wedding thing.
Yep. 40 people or less is a micro wedding.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of packages, as far as I'm concerned, are just kind of a guideline to show people like what we have. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we're pretty much, we'll do whatever you kind of need.
Like my extras that aren't included in my packages are things like, do you need help with the rehearsal dinner? Like, right. So if you book me for my signature package, and I do own decor, a lot of decor, because anything I make for a wedding, I usually keep because I'm making it for guests at cost or clients at cost. But like, let's say they want to use me for the rehearsal dinner. Anything I own decor-wise, I'm extending that package into rehearsal dinner planning. But there is additional cost for that because it's a whole extra day.
Right.
And I usually have another staff person handle the rehearsal dinner because I'm usually on site at the wedding doing these crazy installs. Decor they've had me build.
Right. Okay, so wedding logistics. Pre-wedding logistics.
Okay.
How many meetings will we have and how will we be involved?
It depends on which package you choose. So with day of planning, you basically get 40 hours of planning of Mandy's work. A lot of times that's 2 to 3 meetings, period. There's not a need for more than that, because the gist of day of is that you're doing all the work as the client, and all she's doing is taking the information and organizing it so that she's got a good action plan. So I would say 2 to 3 with day of. Event design, I actually don't do meetings face-to-face. A lot of times it's people from out of state and they don't know who the vendors are to make something happen. And it's just a lot of emailing and digital work. Signature package and full service package, I will meet them as many times as they want to, but so many of my clients are destination clients. Meeting them means just Skype calls, like what we're doing now, Zoom meetings, things like that, so that we can talk through everything if they'd like to meet me face-to-face.
Yeah. I remember, I can't tell you, I mean, you do the same thing. I mean, how many times is the first time you meet the bride and the groom or the couple is that day before?
I make them do a fam trip if possible, because God, that helps calm their nerves so much.
Right.
But my fam trip, it's a familiarization trip. Everybody always thinks it's a trip with the family, but acronyms, come on, people. Familiarization trip, where they come to town, usually in the middle of winter, so their venue looks really epic in the middle of winter. They're like, this is all dead, but I promise by the spring and summer it'll be really green and nice. But then they get to try their food and touch their rentals and talk to their florist, and like they get to meet the vendors face to face, and I find that really calms them down, that everything we have on paper actually does exist in real life.
Right.
It helps make that destination planning a lot easier, and that way it's not multiple trips out here trying to plan it on your own. Like we just literally take care of it in 1 or 2 days.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot easier. I mean, to just do it that way. I've done, I've done that, and then there's those couples that they just can't make it up here, or they can't. So I've totally Skyped a venue tour and, walked around with a camera.
I have recordings on my phone of a few different venues that I've worked with quite a bit, where I actually walk around and I'm like, okay, guys, this is the parking lot. We're going to start as if we're a guest in the parking lot. Let's walk to the ceremony site. And I'm doing a whole video tour, but it's saved on my computer so that I can send it to people that maybe haven't seen it before, or they only see it in the snow in the middle of the winter and it stresses them out that they can't visualize what it looks like as a blank slate.
Yes. I know. And I know, I'm sure this is in here, but it makes me think of this. It's like for decor setup, there's so many people who can't, they can't visualize what their tables are going to look like. So you can sit there and say, okay, well, on Pinterest, here are all the different elements, but they can't figure out, what is it going to look like when it's all together.
Right.
So, I mean, I know I don't draw well. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I could, but we may not really figure out what I'm drawing. So I'll do an actual table setting,
Mhm.
and then take a picture of it and then send it. And then that way we can kind of alter it from there. But I really wish I could draw better because it would make my life easier. But
My fam trip helps out as far as like the place settings go, because we'll see the rentals and the silverware and they get to pick it up and feel
right.
like nice quality and all that. So we do that. But as far as the flowers go, like, how are you, like, other than paying for the flowers in advance,
Right.
you're not going to see the flowers in advance. So I know, like, a lot of my brides, they want it to look like something on Pinterest, but they still want it to be individual to them.
Yes.
So that's why I sketch out stuff on Illustrator. I do a lot of drawings on Illustrator to show people what their tables are going to look like. Dessert tables, bar setups, you name it. So I do a lot of sketches that way to help them visualize. And I got to do a better job on Instagram showing people like what the sketch looked like versus what the final looked like. Cause then you'd see like, oh, it looks pretty similar. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I've been trying to find like some kind of program, you know, like, what is it? What are the brothers?
The property
brothers. You know how they do that before thing and they sketch, you know, they plan it out and then that you can see the before. I want something like that. I want to be able to do that. So that's one of those things that I'm working on this downtime we have right now, is trying to figure out, you know, to come up with something so that I'm not going and, you know, doing it the hard way really right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, flowers are hard because, I mean, unless you're going to buy a full bouquet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's okay. So one of my biggest, and you'll probably interview a florist about this as well.
Yes.
One of my biggest peeves is when a bride shows you a bouquet and says, but I like this flower type and this flower type, and it's nothing like that bouquet. Mm-hmm. It's no longer going to look anything like that bouquet. So there's got to be some trust that you know that your florist is understanding like the overall feel of what you're going for, mm-hmm. versus this is the bouquet that I have to have, but then we're going to substitute like, I don't even know what, like a sunflower, something huge that's going to be like totally the focal point, but right. It's not going to look like anything you just showed me a picture mm-hmm. of that looks very like structured. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Flower arrangements too.
Huh?
I draw flower arrangements too to show.
I figured you did.
Their flower arrangements.
But you also like make little. You make things for your people too.
Oh, the ornaments.
The ornaments.
Yeah, for Christmas, if you've booked me for planning, I make a replica of your Christmas or your wedding cake as an ornament for a tree.
Like have you thought about doing their bouquets too?
No, I have a good idea for this year though.
Okay.
I might change it up a little bit.
Nice.
I got a cute idea for Christmas.
Donut wall.
Nothing to do with donut walls.
Donut wall. And there's donuts everywhere. Do you handle professional services, contracts, and payment processing?
So yes and no. I will not make payments on behalf of a client to a vendor. I believe that the contract should be between the client and the vendor so that the client is able to get exactly what they want directly with the vendor. My job is to request the specific items from the vendor, request a contract from the vendor, because a lot of times if I'm left out of the loop, like it's so day of is so hard when you weren't the person that was involved in any of the contracting. And then suddenly you're brought on board and the vendors are like, who the heck are you? Mm-hmm. Unless they've worked with you before. And if they had worked with me before, they're like, oh yes, okay, cool. I don't have to worry about anything on this wedding day. Autumn, I know you got it. But if they haven't worked with me, I've had venues that were like, we will not talk to you. We will not talk to you. You are not on the contract. You have to get an addendum added to the contract that we can send you any of the info. So it's a lot more helppful if I am the person that's saying, hey, I'm the planner. Mm-hmm. I'm requesting a contract. This is the client's name and their contact information. If you can get a contract out to me, then the vendor knows I'm involved.
Right.
But it is my job to read through the contract, make sure I'm advocating for my client, make sure that the contract's fair and that everybody understands the terms, but that it is up to the clients to pay those bills and make sure that they are, you know, getting taken care of. Oh my gosh, my parents are sending me pictures of, they're driving on a road trip right now with my dog that isn't in surgery because he's going to be in quarantine himself. And I guess they just sent me a picture of him on the pillow in the back seat of the car. It's cute.
Oh. Which one is it? Is
Finn.
Finn?
Finn's my naughty dog, and he's going to go live with my parents for 8 weeks. So we're calling that boarding school.
Nice.
My dad is going to whip that dog in the shape.
When we go on vacation, we send Cleo to camp down the Wind River Tales and Trails.
Oh, I've heard of them.
We send her there. Okay. So yes, I concur with everything that Autumn just said there. Can you walk us through the process of selecting other vendors and how we would be involved?
Yeah, so I don't start with any vendor recommendations until we've got a grip on your budget, what you want to spend, what you want it to look like. And once we've agreed on those things, then I will give you some vendor recommendations. And my vendor recommendations, I don't have a list of vendors to refer. I literally have a list of like every vendor in the area that services the area where you're getting married. And I go through the list and I think, okay, who can do this for the price point that we need to stick to, that's going to be like giving you the products that you want, that also works with your personality. And I give clients 3 vendors in every category, and then they do a little bit of research and figure out which vendor they want to work with. So I help narrow it down, but I still want the clients to have ownership in the choices that they make as far as which vendors they pick. That way that they're excited about it. It's not just me telling them what they're going to do. And I don't do that with anything. Like if you have to have something happen on your wedding day, I will make it happen for you. If it's like, gosh, I'm trying to think back. There have been times like right now I'm going through this with a client that really wants a specific timeline. And there are parts of the timeline that really aren't going to work very well. I am totally advocating for like changing it just enough that it's going to flow better, that the guests will be happier, that the vendors are able to do what they're supposed to do, because currently the way the timeline's set really isn't helping anybody at all. It's anyways, but it's that's I digress. That's part of my job though, is to make sure that I'm finding the vendors that are going to fit with what you want to have happen on your day. Putting together a good team of pros specifically for the wedding's needs.
And what do you say to those that say, that's great that you sent me this, but I heard that such and such vendor is, you know, the best or awesome. How come they're not on my list?
Okay, book them. I'll work with anybody. I don't care. I will literally work with any vendor. I will say there are a few vendors that I've worked with in the past that, like, I'm going through it right now with one vendor that hasn't given the client the product that they really wanted. But again, the client picked that specific vendor. So I'm still advocating for the client, but at the same time, like, I'm not going to be quiet about an issue that I've had in the past. I definitely speak up. I'm very vocal and I have no problem speaking up.
What?
Say, hey, so this is what happened at the last time I worked with this vendor. I'm not saying we shouldn't work with them. I'm just bringing this up as an issue. Let's talk about how we can make this better and smoother for the next time we work with this vendor. I will never tell somebody don't work with a vendor. I will work with anybody, but it's just, there have been a few times in the past where it's ended up with clients in tears because they picked a vendor that didn't give them what they wanted. And I'm like, okay, I want another client that's coming up that picks that same vendor to know that this happened, and this is how we're going to go about making sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay. Let's see.
Pardon me, I have my McDonald's Big Gulp. I have McDonald's ones every 5 years. See, I'm having it today.
I just have water. It's my.
I also have kombucha.
Oh, nice.
And an energy drink as well, just in case.
Yeah, because you need caffeine.
I had to stay awake on the road trip this morning.
Oh my gosh. Are you willing to step in as our advocate, conveying our visions and desires to pros when we can't?
That's exactly what my job is. That's like my whole job, is to sit down. My very first meeting with a client is to get to understand where they sit with their budget, what things they think are included in their budget. Because, oh my God, I can't, you know this. People are like, oh, the honeymoon's included in the budget. And you're like, okay. So then, like, the wedding budget is not what you said it was going to be.
Well, and that's why in my thing, I say, you know, what is your budget minus, you know, honeymoon, attire, rings.
Yeah. So I include rings, attire, hair, makeup, all those things. I include all of that in the budget in the first initial call. And then I go through line item of like, do you consider that to be included? I totally lost track of the question you just asked me. We totally got off subject.
Gee, there's something new and different.
It might be the caffeine.
You think?
Something about was it advocating?
Advocating, conveying our visions and desires to pros.
Yeah, got way off topic.
Yes. It's what you do.
It is. So that's why I'm sketching everything for clients. That's why, like, there's a floral shop in town and I love working with them. But I remember when I first started sending them sketches, they were like, what the hell is this? We don't need your sketches. And then now working with them, they're like, we look forward to your sketches because we understand that you're not trying to like suffocate us on what we're supposed to do. It's like literally like the looseness of the bouquet and the amount of color blocking in a bouquet. That's what I'm asking you to do. Like, that's it. So I think now that I've worked with a bunch of these vendors over the last 6 years, they like understand that I'm like, hey, it's the whole vision altogether. And that's why I'm being so specific on what I'm sketching. So that's kind of how I advocate. I like to draw everything out and just show the clients, and the clients say, yes, you've got my vision. And then that's what goes to the vendors to create the vision.
So when you do mood boards,
yes,
is that what you kind of do, a combination of things that they have found, or do you just sketch it all out?
I do both. Okay, I'll find you one. I'll find you one right here. I will show you things.
I love things.
Because you're going to think I'm crazy. There's a lot of pages here, but I'm going to show you anyways.
I already think you're crazy, so that's fine.
Right? So this would be like a ceremony mood board. So it's like actual pictures that I've pulled off of their Pinterest page and off of my Pinterest page that they've liked. So I'm making sure, okay, so people go crazy with Pinterest and they stay on Pinterest way too long, and they are pinning things on Pinterest after the wedding's like all designed and planned. And then they're still pinning things on Pinterest and you're like, we're way beyond Pinterest now.
Right.
I use Pinterest at the beginning as a tool to like, you show me things that you really like. And then from there, I pull it and I start making the vision for you. So that was ceremony. I've got one for cocktail hour, reception, flowers. So I do these so that we can get them to vendors, right?
Right.
That's just mood boards. That's just pictures. And that's the very beginning stages of like, before we even go to meet the vendors, we've got the mood set.
Right.
For everything that vendor is going to do, we want it to fit within these mood boards. Then for flowers, this was my flower arrangement sketch.
Oh.
So I do, except the big X, we had to cross that one thing off of there. I do dessert sketches so that you can see what their dessert's going to look like. And then this is going to be really hard to see because it's very ivory, but like sketches of the tables. And I've got like round tables, rectangle tables, head tables, the dessert station. So I do sketches of basically every element that has a design part to it. And that really helps the vendors be like, okay, Autumn, we got it.
But you just do that for your full and
that's event design,
signature?
Event design, full service, and signature. So the only one that doesn't get it is the day of.
Okay. All right. Because, people will ask. Okay. Will you handle the invitations from wording and ordering to the addressing and mailing? And what about guest list coordination and RSVPs?
Yeah, so I have the coolest
Winter Co. hat on.
Winter Paper Company. I send them out a spreadsheet at the very beginning when they first book me, and it doesn't matter if they're signature or not. They still get a guest list spreadsheet because there's things that everybody makes a guest list and then like doesn't include all the tabs that they need to include to collect the right information from people. So I have a spreadsheet I send out that collects the right information. And then with Winter Paper Company, I'm actually like, I can do gold foiling, I can do letterpress, not just gold foiling, I can foil. I can do letterpress, I can do embossing, you name it. I do custom watercolors for people. I do custom sketches, like
die cuts,
digital sketches. I can do die cuts. I've cut out the shape of Montana quite a few times on different cards. I think we're doing that this year for somebody as well. But yeah, I do all sorts of customized paper products for people. So yeah, I handle all that too. And I've got questionnaires I send out that answer. I send out questionnaires, but that doesn't mean that anybody fills them out. Because when they're doing full service planning, they're like, we don't know. Can you help us fill that out for you?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's more about like the language and how formal of etiquette you want on your invites and who's hosting the wedding and how you want that to appear. Yeah, I'll help with all that.
Okay.
As far as mailing invitations go, I will say something about mailing invitations because every post office is different and every post office can be incredibly hard to deal with. There, I said it. U.S. Postal Service, take that. I cannot tell you how many post offices I had to go to find one post office that would let me hand cancel the invitations.
Where was that? Because I haven't found one yet.
Florence. They're my people at Florence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because Missoula won't do it.
They won't do it. And I've been to every post office in Missoula. So I had one client that I learned this in like one of my first years of planning. I had them mail invitations and I asked them to weigh the invitations before they sent them out. And all they did was put one stamp on and drop them in the box and they didn't weigh them. And 150 invitations went out and didn't go anywhere because there wasn't enough postage. Right. Or they showed up to someone's post office box and someone had to pay the balance to get their invitations. So I ended up having to reprint the invitations. And actually that post office, that was at the University of Montana. They paid for postage all over again to replace the postage where they didn't say anything to the client about it.
Wow. Yeah. That's
postage is crazy. So weigh a sample of your invitations before you order custom postage or put any postage on your invites because it happens more often than I can count.
Well, the other thing that people like going back to doing the invite list, a lot of people, they don't realize when they're doing guest counts that a lot of their information, what the hell are you doing?
I just realized how much I was touching my face, so I just went.
They say, oh, well, I'm sending out 100 invites, but they don't realize that that means there's going to be at least probably 200 people there.
Oh yeah. So my spreadsheet tallies down at the bottom based on names on one side. So these are the spreadsheets that I get from people is that it's like Mr. and Mrs. Smith as like the line on the spreadsheet. And I'm like, well, that's nice. But Mr. and Mrs. Smith, is that like, that's 2 people, right? Mm-hmm. Or is it Mr. and Mrs. Smith with family and it's now 5 people on this one line? And then how many people are actually going to show up to the wedding? So my spreadsheet has like the actual names of every single person that you're inviting is 1 or 2 columns, I guess.
Right.
And then a few columns over, it's like the formal name of how you're going to invite this whole family group, this unit. Mm-hmm. And that way it tallies how many total people could actually show up to the wedding day. And then this other column that tallies the actual names on the envelopes of how many invitations you're actually ordering. Because oh my God, yes. So how many times have I asked a client, how many invites do you want? And they're like, 100. And I'm like, you told me you have 100 guests.
Yes, right.
So you probably only want like 50 invitations, maybe 60. And they're like, no, we need 100. And I print 100 and they give me the addresses to mail to. And
they have 50 left over.
Extra invitations over here. I'm like, I even tried to talk you through that. I gave you a spreadsheet.
Okay, so now we're going to, oh, wait, we've got one more. Do you handle rentals? Will you coordinate delivery, arrival, and setup times with the photographer, florist, musicians, and the caterer/banquet manager?
So that's one of the more important parts of our job, I think, is managing the timeline and managing the vendors' setup and giving the vendors ample time to do their jobs, finding out how long it's going to take them to do their jobs. Like the florist. The florist might say, well, I'm going to just show up at 10 o'clock and start setting flowers on tables. And you're like, well, the tables aren't going to be set till noon.
Yeah. Oh, no. Is that your, no?
Not my vet.
Okay. Just let everybody know that if the phone rings and it's her vet, we're going to pause. And then she's got to take this call because, you know,
my doggy's in surgery.
Puppy baby's in surgery.
Oh, my child.
So
she's okay. She'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know one of the things when I call vendors, you know, beforehand, you know, usually that 2 to 4 weeks before to finalize everything, it's, you know, where they're supposed to park, where there's, you know, when they can get there, when they can set up, how they can set up. And, you know, we're there on site to kind of guide that.
Yeah.
So
I usually build fluff into my timeline to give vendors enough time to get things done. I think one of the more important things I do with the photographer is making sure that you are talking. Every photographer is different. I've had photographers that need a whole hour and a half to take photos during cocktail hour. And then I've had photographers that only need 20 minutes. So knowing who your photographer is and how much time they need to do their job well helps you plan the whole rest of the day versus, oh my God, we need to be in dinner now. And the photographer is still taking photos. Like,
right. See, I know like with timelines, I will work with a photographer first and get their timeline of what they need. And then I try to work around them just because, you know,
force them to go any faster.
Right. But I mean, if they give me a specific timeline and they say it's only going to take an hour to do this and they're going on an hour 2, well, I'm going to go find them.
Yes, exactly.
You know, so
like, we are super, I think you and I are the very same personality wise, where we want to set up all the vendors for success and we want them to be realistic about the amount of time it's going to take them to do things. We're not screaming planners. We will never go behind the scenes and scream at somebody in the kitchen to do something faster. You can't make something cook faster, you know, like that's not the way we work, but we do work in advance to make sure that these things don't even become issues on the wedding day. And I mean, there is such a thing. You are military. I did ROTC. I know how to sass people around if I need to sass people around, but I choose not to do that because I plan ahead and don't need to do that.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's the thing I think. And that's one of the, I also find, you know, there's a question of, can you create a timeline? Of course, it's what we do. Life, you know, begins and ends by the timeline. But I mean, I forgot what I was going to say. So go ahead. Cause I just lost it.
Let's go into timeline. So when I'm building a timeline for clients, I tell them the absolute most important times. There's only 2 important times of the whole day that I care about. And that's the time that the ceremony starts. And that's the time that the food needs to be served.
Right.
Because hot food, hot, cold food, cold. I used to work in catering. Dear God, if the chef is not happy, nobody's happy. So I care about those 2 times. And then beyond that, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care about anything else. As long as I have the right order of events of, like, let's say you want garter toss, you want bouquet toss, you want to do toasts, you want to cut the cake, you want to do first dances. I'll get all that information of exactly how we're doing those things, but they don't have to happen exactly at 7:45. If they happen at 8 o'clock, it's okay. I just know the order of when these things are going to happen. And I'm either going to kind of push guests along to make them happen faster if I need to, or I'll slow it down and let you have some time to talk to family. If it seems like everybody's still having a good time and vibing at that moment, I'm not going to split it up. So that is one thing of feedback. I think writing a strong timeline that's also really flexible.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I totally, you know, tell people in the beginning, this is just a guide to make sure that we hit everything. If, you know, one thing seems like it's really going well and it's flowing, I'm not going to sit there and say, okay, everybody stop having fun now. It's time to do this. No. Or if something's kind of dragging a little bit and you're like, oh gosh, we need to move this along, then yeah, I mean, so that's part of that managing the day so that people either don't feel like they're sitting around bored to death or they're being rushed through the whole day and not being able to enjoy.
Yep. And that is one of the feedback that I keep getting back from clients is like, that was one of the smoother weddings I've ever been to. And it's because it's like the DJ's job to read the crowd and play the right music.
Right.
It's our job to read the crowd and move it along as we need to move it along, not to stick to some stringent timeline of like exactly I will say sunset photos might be another important time in the time frame. I missed that.
Yeah.
But if you want sunset photos, we're putting it on the timeline. And I'm trying to make sure that I haven't crowded anything around that time span, or that we're keeping an eye on the fact that sunset photos are coming up and you need to start doing first dances. Are we going to postpone first dances so you can go ahead and get your photos? Like, that's also our job to make those calls to give you still everything that you want on your wedding day.
Right. I concur. All right. How many people will be on your staff at the wedding?
That's determined by the size and the scope of your wedding plans.
If you've got 300 people, guess what?
I'm going to have like at least 5 people in addition to me on site, if not 6. Yeah. It's usually like every 50 people, I add another body. And that helps make sure we like to set the tables. I set the tables. I don't have the caterer set the tables because when the caterer shows up, they usually show up about an hour before food service time.
Right.
Your photographer is really busy and can't get table shots. Like hardly ever happens when you let the photographer set them. So my staff comes in, they set the tables, they'll move chairs between the ceremony and the reception. There's usually a lot of instances where I'm reusing decor and resetting things in between events. So like, if I'm like, let's say you're having your ceremony and then you go to cocktail hour in a different location, I'm going to tear down ceremony and reuse the chairs and reuse any flowers I can in the reception to make your reception look like even better.
Right.
And that way you're saving money in that regard, but I need the staff to make that happen. Moving 300 chairs. But we do it every weekend. Like I believe that's part of our job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
save money in that. Like, I know that there's a lot of planners out there that will make you rent double chairs. And like these French X-Back chairs that are super popular right now at like $15 a piece with a pad. You're going to make a client do double chairs. Like, I would rather just do one order of the chairs, and yeah, they suck to stack and I can only carry like 2 or 3 at a time, but I have carts. I use carts. I come prepared, and that way you're spending the money on things that matter more, like maybe more desserts or a better dinner or a bigger bar with liquor on it. You know, like the things that your guests are really going to matter, are going to care about. The chairs, they matter a lot for the aesthetic, but buying double chairs is not my thing.
No, I agree. I
know you're going to hate me for saying that, because Mandy's always like, every time we're moving chairs, she's like, why can't you get people to just order 2 chairs?
You know what though? I'm the same way. I don't think I have ever had someone do double chairs. I mean, we may have done like, if we had the ceremony out in the field, we may have done, you know, benches or hay barrels or something. But we've never done double chairs.
I've got a couple clients that have done that, where like the chairs are able to be preset in the reception area because I've used my benches out in the ceremony area. I love that. It definitely alleviates a lot of work. But then that's an instance of like where I need less staff than what I would normally need on wedding day. So my staffing counts definitely change based on the scope of what the wedding day needs.
Right. Now, I know there's a lot of clients that say, well, you know, they're trying to keep the costs down, and I totally get that. But you know, there's that. Well, I have lots of family and friends that will help.
About drunk uncle right now,
huh?
Are you going to talk about drunk uncle right now?
Oh, drunk uncle, or drunk aunts. You know, but they always have that friend, family member that will help the day of, that, you know. And in my experience, every single wedding that I have been told, and these 3 people can help you all day long to set things up so that I don't have to bring 3 more staff people. It never happens. I may get like 1 or 2 people that will help for maybe 10, 15 minutes in the beginning because they like to decorate. But then all bets are off because drinks happen, party happens, and by 6 o'clock they're not there.
You don't want your guests having to work your wedding. That's the whole point of hiring a planner and our staff, is that you didn't want somebody to work your wedding day.
Right.
So that's number 1, why I provide staff. Number 2, it doesn't matter if you, like you said, if people are going to provide friends or family to help set up, they might help set up. They might. I've had people help set up.
Oh, yeah.
The Friday before, they'll help set up before a rehearsal dinner. And I've had some helpful people that are like almost annoying with wanting to help. But by the end of the wedding night, they're tanked. Right. And they're like not careful about what they're doing with things. They're folding your linens up with like the whole cake in the linen. And now you pay for replacement cost of that linen because food is in the linen.
Right.
Wet linens didn't get placed to the side because you can't control what drunk people are doing because they're not listening to you.
Right.
I will never. I had a band that drank too much while they were performing, and they backed over the sewer lid cap at the venue and wrecked the sewer cap.
Perfect.
The sewer lid like open after the tear down. Like,
that's awesome.
Drunk people happen every single wedding, but having them tear down is not a good idea, or even help set up. I'd rather your guests just enjoy the wedding day.
Absolutely. What happens if you're sick or otherwise unable to be there on the day of our wedding?
I haven't missed one yet, and
see what you did now?
No. what is 2018 was the first year that I got a migraine the day after the wedding, and I had to have somebody drive me home because
Right. I remember that.
I went blind. So like ocular migraine, somebody had to drive my truck and trailer home. They drove me straight to the hospital when we got back from Glacier. Straight to the hospital in Missoula. So I haven't missed a wedding yet. I did get a migraine at the wedding that I just had in February. But Mandy was the day of planner. So I basically did as much as I could for her with like one eye open, and I was on the migraine medicine, which made me not intelligible. Like I shouldn't have talked to anybody. I couldn't form a full thought.
Right.
But so far, even with that, and I will tell you that for those of you that don't get migraines, they're actually serious and they suck real bad. So the fact that I still work weddings with migraines is, I do it. But I have an awesome team who's been with me Mandy's been with me for 6 years, and the other girls that do help out on wedding days, the majority of them have been with me for at least 3 or 4 years now. They all know what needs to get done. Mm-hmm. Even if I had to sit there and not even do anything and point directions to people, your wedding will happen really smoothly. So I've got a staff that would take it on. I have no doubt Mandy's already doing it with day of planning. So we've got it covered.
And I guess do we even have that anymore? Because remember when Kathy was here and something happened and she called you and you stepped in and took her wedding for her.
6 days before the wedding, I think she had a family emergency and she had to leave town, and she told the client she couldn't do the wedding, and I picked it up and I sat down and had a really long phone call with them and made an event order and made an event plan and did it in the way that I understand. That wedding ran so smooth. It was fine.
Yeah. And I mean, I do the same thing. I mean, I've got staff that if something were to go down, I know they could handle it. Worst case scenario, I'm calling Autumn, seeing if she has the date available or if Mandy's available or something. So
I do written event orders, timelines, maps, inventory lists. I've got all the rental agreements. Like this, I just pulled the pages out of it, but this is like one client's binder and it's like a mess right now because I just pulled these out. But like, this is the whole wedding day. It's all like in writing,
right
on the computer. If I were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, like you could still get into my computer system and print everything off for the whole summer. Like I'm done event planning for the majority of the summer too.
Yeah. Cause you have to have a plan B, D, E, F. Okay. So I'm going to ask this question, but like, I don't particularly know the answer to this, but how many weddings have you planned?
I don't know.
A lot?
Yeah. So I think before I even opened my business, I was working for hotels and we were regularly doing like 15 to 20 weddings in a year. So I was over 100 by the time I even started my own business. Now I might be over 200. I don't know.
Yeah, because
I don't know.
I'm trying to think. Just since I've been here for, I'm so bad at like I need a calculator. I mean, I'm probably just shy of 100 at this point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay. How many weddings will you be working on throughout the entire process and on the day of at the same time? So like, I guess the main thing is, are you going to have time to give the attention to clients, even though you have, 12, 15 weddings?
So this is my full-time job.
Right.
It's my job to manage my own schedule. And I would not want to overbook myself because the worst thing that could happen for any of us is to start getting bad reviews on our service. So I will only take on the amount of weddings that I'm able to take on. Even if that requires, like we were just talking about, taking a wedding 6 days out before the wedding. In those instances, I give a lot of time to that wedding 6 days out from the wedding.
Right.
And I postpone a few things that I'm doing for other clients, but I don't miss deadlines. I've never missed a deadline that I had due to a client. So I'm really good at managing my own schedule because guess what? I'm a planner. But I would say like in the summertime, a lot of times I'm anywhere from like 10 to 15 weddings in a summer, but it's just because there's really only 15 good weekends in Montana. So starting at the end of May and going into like September. There's 15 nice where it's going to be like hopefully reasonable temperatures to have outdoor weddings. So I usually cap out about 15. As far as how many weddings I take in a weekend, I personally take one in a weekend because it's way too much for me to handle doing anything more than focusing on one event in a weekend. Mandy, however, when she takes on the day of planning, she might have a day of planning on the same day that I have a wedding, but that doesn't affect me.
Right.
I'm still there. I'm your contact. You've been working with me the whole time.
I'm just going through some of these questions to see if they're even like, okay. Have you planned any other weddings at our site? 99.9% of the time, probably.
Is it Green Valley Ranch? I love them.
So destination weddings. So let's talk a little bit about destination weddings because it's a little bit different than scheduling, doing a wedding for a local bride or a local couple because there's more uncertainty. There's more things. So
I don't know what you're talking about. That's how I operate. I don't know. I don't know any different.
It sounded good. Come on. I'm trying to.
So most of my clients are destination clients.
Yep.
And even if they are local clients, they're probably not getting married locally. They're still probably traveling somewhere a couple hours away to get married because the state is huge. But I do a ton with Skyping, and that's again going back to all the visual things that I create for people, the sketches and the conversations that we have. My planning tools, all of that is meant to help keep their minds at ease that I'm listening, I understand, here it is in writing, this is the plan. So there's a lot of tools.
But don't you find that when you're talking to a bride who is in, the South, Florida, Texas, New Mexico, Southern California, they don't really understand Montana weather and what to expect. So I know I had a wedding in the winter and they were from a warm place that doesn't have snow, and they didn't understand that, we have snow until May sometimes. So they couldn't grasp that. So they didn't understand why we needed a contingency plan, why, there was any concern about, why we couldn't have it outside all the time, or if anything would change. So, what do you say to those couples that are coming from places that don't have some of the stuff that we have, like fire season?
It's actually part of my contract. So when you get through to one of the last lines of my contract, it's about event requirements. And one of the main event requirements is having proper heating and shelter for your guests. So it's not an option. They contract with me that we will provide proper heating and shelter. I, again, work with them from the very beginning. If they're booking me for a full service package, they're booking me to help them with their budget. Right. And one of the first things I do is put money into the budget for a tent and walls and a heater and a generator and whatever else I need to make sure that the guests are going to be comfortable. There's not a whole lot I can do about smoke season. I will say we'll throw a super kink in your plans if it's really heavy smoky and there's not much to do about it. But I have had weddings when it was terribly smoky, and I mean, people are coughing because it's so thick. But as far as winter goes and being prepared for heat and all that stuff, it's always in the budget. I won't let them take that out of the budgeting plans. So they always know, like, your rental companies will do this with you as well, where like the week of the event, if you are looking at the weather forecast and it looks like it's going to be okay, you can cancel the tent at the last minute, but you're going to pay a deposit for it. I would rather my clients pay that deposit for the tent than call them the week of and say, oh God, it looks like it's going to rain and we don't have a tent and no one has a tent. So I hold stuff until like the last minute and we'll let it go and pay a deposit on items just so that we have a safety net. Because if you don't plan for it, it will happen to you. But if you plan for it, it never freaking happens. Like if I sit down and I go through somebody's rain plan and talk to you for an hour about your rain plan, and I know it sucks and nobody wants to do the rain plan, it's plan B, obviously. But if we have this solid rain plan, I guarantee you that like, if there is a rain shower, it's like going to just pass through and we don't have to do the rain plan because we have an alternate option.
Right.
So silly. I don't know how, like, I understand it's like the most important day of your life because I do this all the time. This is my job, is to help you plan the most important day of your life. I know you don't want to do the rain plan. Otherwise, rain plan would be plan A. But let's still have one.
Oh, so true. Oh, so true. So I love this question because, well, what's your secret for staying calm under pressure, and how do you deal with day of disasters?
Well, number one, I will say that there has been no real day of disasters that are something I can't handle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of putting in the time in advance to build a strong timeline and to have like a plan A and a plan B on a lot of instances. Yeah, I haven't had like weather. I've had a contingency plan. So everybody's calm.
Right.
Like, sorry guys, but we might have to do the contingency plan.
Mm-hmm.
I've had grandmas pass out at weddings before because they wouldn't drink water.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but it was like, it's happened at like 2 weddings. And it was funny because the 2 weddings it happened at, everybody at the wedding was a doctor. So
that's convenient.
I didn't really have to worry about that either. I just got bags of ice and like,
right.
I don't know. I think it takes a certain personality to be a planner to begin with.
But I think, if you have, when you do this for so many years,
mm-hmm.
and, you know what to expect and what could happen, and you have a plan for it, you're not being sideswiped, so you're not going to panic. So you're always going to be calm because if something happens, you know what to do. And even if that doesn't work, you've got a backup plan for it.
I'm not kidding you. Like, I've been in like 3 natural disasters. I've been in a hurricane, I've been in a flood, and then, well, I guess pandemic.
And pandemic.
But no matter what, people look to you as the planner to guide them through whatever's happening. Not saying the natural disasters, but even in the natural disasters.
Oh no, yeah.
Like, the first thing I did during the floods, fill a bathtub full with water and take everything out of the freezer and put it into a cooler so that I could preserve my food as long as possible. And after that, I didn't care what happened. I didn't have power and water for a whole week. It was fine. That's when I actually wrote the event plan for Events by Autumn, was because I was bored for like 7 days. But like, it's the same thing. That's just, it's in our personalities. And that's why we're good as planners, is because we do act really calm under pressure. We think pretty logical. We usually have a plan somewhere rumbling around in the back of our minds for how we're going to react to certain scenarios. But even at a wedding, when something happens, I'm usually the first one to be like, okay, guys, it's starting to rain. If you could just grab your chairs and head under the tent, like everybody in a calm fashion, like, you maintain control of the situation no matter what's happening. I don't know.
Maintain control. Just like that. And then payments. How do you work payments?
So I take a deposit up front, and it's actually not that much of a deposit for the amount of work that I do up front. And then the remaining balance that's due, I split it in half, and I have half that's due at 120 days out, and then the final balance is due 30 days out.
Do you do a percentage or do you do a flat rate package?
I know. So I have a whole spreadsheet, which I always laugh when people are like, what is my quote? I'm like, I don't know. I got it.
Give me 20 minutes.
I literally have a spreadsheet that divvies up the amount of time it takes me to do every single task, depending on how big your wedding is. Some things won't change at all because some things are the same no matter what the guest count is. There are a lot of things like folding napkins and moving chairs and like things like that I do take into account up front so that we don't have to worry about it later on down the road. I don't, let's see, my rate is my rate. I've never had to charge anybody more, but I definitely like lay out the plan of like, this is what it's going to cost you to have me plan your wedding.
Right.
Additional things like stationery and like my signature package, there are additional fees. If you're going to have me like sew linens for you, I still have to cover the cost of those expenses and those materials. So that is something that, again, it's part of the budget. It's never not part of the budget. Like, you know exactly what you're paying for up front, but I just send out bills after the wedding for those items most of the time.
And do you carry personal liability and professional indemnity insurance?
I sure do.
I think it's required. I mean, now because we're both members of the Western Montana Wedding Association, and for those of you who don't know, this one right here actually created this association that we're all such proud members of. And it's required. I mean, it is required. So you know that if you're hiring someone through an association, they're going to have insurance. They have to.
Yeah, they're professional wedding vendors, which is the whole point of the association, to be able to hire anybody from that website and be able to trust that they're going to show up and perform.
Right. Yep.
There are a lot of vendors in Montana that aren't necessarily professional vendors. You've got people that are cooking out of their personal kitchens.
Right.
And you've got people that just bought a camera and are calling themselves a photographer that have no formal training, have never even done a wedding before, you know? So I think hiring vendors off the association pages is stronger and smarter to protect yourself on your wedding day.
Yeah. They've been vetted.
Yep.
So those are all the questions.
What?
So, I know. See, it just went by like that.
For us, maybe not the people watching.
Well, that's true. But, you know, I mean, we didn't go off on tangents too much about things. I mean, so what's your favorite kind of wedding to do?
Favorite kind?
Mm-hmm.
Ranch wedding.
Ranch wedding?
Yeah, I am totally like cowgirl at heart. So I love anything on an old ranch. I'm definitely like, my whole house is kind of this way where it's still rustic, but it's industrial too. It's modern, but rustic. I like weddings that have that same vibe. And I think the ranch weddings can pull a lot of that together, where it's like, maybe it's an old, like dilapidated building, but you've made it beautiful with and added some ranchy like patterns and motifs and stuff into it. I love horses. Anything that has to do with horses, I'm on board. I feel like the crazy little horse girl from when I was 6 years old. It never went away.
And how many horses do you have?
There's 2 here at the house right now.
What are their names?
Cloud and Taz.
Taz as in Tasmanian devil?
Devil, but he's the sweetest boy.
Okay.
An old boy.
And how many goats do you have?
2.
And their names?
Thelma and Louise.
And your chickens?
Yes.
How many?
I have 8 of those.
No names?
They got names, but the ones that for sure I can tell you, Blue is my rooster, because my old rooster died and we were super sad. So we rescued a rooster that a lady was going to feed to the raptors. And so we called him Blue after the raptor in Jurassic Park. You know, raptors like wild, like birds of prey kind of thing.
Right.
So we rescued him. So he's Blue. And then I have Curious Georgia.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then we know you have dogs.
Yeah, Rowdy and Finn.
And what other animals do you have?
I've got a cat, Psycho, and then there's another cat, Rascal, who I haven't seen in probably 6 months. But we know he's still here because anytime it snows, there's footprints to the barn, and he's eating the food, and it's cat footprints. So
and you have another unofficial pet.
What? Henrietta. I haven't seen Henrietta since last fall, but Henrietta was my pet turkey. She would totally come over and like not afraid of any animals on the property and would get like 2 feet away from me. And I never fed her. She just liked me. I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's kind of, well, that's good. That's good.
The fact that she pooped all over my deck, and it took me a long time to clean that up.
Yeah. So do you have any words of wisdom to, let's start with vendors who might be listening or watching or whatever they're doing?
I would say for vendors, it's important to keep learning and keep advancing what you do, because in an industry like this, when trends are changing and brides are looking for something different every year, they're on Pinterest. I mean, that's the downfall of Pinterest, is that you kind of have to reinvent yourself quite a bit. Having professional contracts to back you up is major, especially like we were talking about these destination clients. They're coming from a location where they don't understand just a handshake. That's not even a thing where they come. So if you're looking to book more destination clients, having something that's actually in writing with a strong contract that isn't one-sided. Like, you don't want a contract to only protect you as the vendor. You want to explain the contract should equally tell the client exactly what they need to do to get out of it and protect them just as much as it protects you. It's just an agreement of what you're going to do and what's required from them. So I think both of those things are super important for vendors.
And for potential clients?
Potential clients, I would say, I don't know how to. So,
I didn't tell you about these questions because I want to catch you off guard.
I'm not good thinking on my feet. I'm totally a planner. I got to plan it all out. You know, every client is different. And the one thing that it keeps rattling through my mind lately is that I have had clients be like, oh, that's not what I wanted at all. You know, and you're like, well, I'm not a mind reader. So if you can show me like even 1 or 2 pictures of what you want your wedding day to look like, I could make a whole wedding happen off of just 1 or 2 photos and a budget. But a lot of the things that I go through and a lot of the questions that I'm asking you, the only reason why I'm doing that is to find out what really makes you tick and how I can make your wedding different. So I understand that there's a lot of stressors that are happening behind the scenes as well, like decisions that have to be made for the wedding and family interactions and things like that that are going on behind the scenes. I am here to help you plan the wedding, and I am very, I don't know, I'm not a super emotional person at all. I'm very logistics based. So if you'd like to bounce things off of me, I'm not the most empathetic human on the planet, but at the same time, I'm also not a punching bag. And I think I've gotten past that a couple years ago. I kind of like set myself up that I'm like, I'm not going to set myself up for that anymore.
Yeah.
But I feel like with clients, like all of the planners that you hire just want the best for you on your wedding day. And all we're trying to do is use our past experience to make sure that the wedding happens smoothly. So when we're making suggestions, it's not to upset you. It's not to tell you that we don't like your idea. It's not to tell you that what you're doing is wrong. It's just because we've probably done it in the past and it didn't work the way that you have in your head. So I would just say, as much as we're going to approach your ideas with an open mind, we would love if clients would approach us with an open mind too when we make suggestions.
Very well stated. I concur.
Well, to get to there, because I didn't plan that answer.
Well, you know. So, all right. So that's that. So this is our first interview through the association, the Western Montana Wedding Association. And you can check out all the vendors that we have on westernmontanawedding.com. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. westernmontanawedding.com. So thank you. And thank you, Autumn, for taking time out of your day to spend some time with me and answer questions.
You bet. I'm going to go ahead and call my dog's veterinarian right now and see what's up.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.